I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen. Don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. You'll be lean and mean, guaranteed, just like the two doctors. That's right. Not one, but two doctors on this Friday show. I decided, you know what? Friday is too important to just have one doctor show up. So what did I do? Oh, yeah, I just bested myself. This is not a one-on-one. Today it's a one-on-two. Wait, that's starting to sound like some kind of wacky sex thing. Hey, folks, I'm not into that stuff, but if I was, never mind. Put your keys in a bowl. Never mind. I didn't mean to say that. They probably don't even know what I'm talking about because they're so young. They have no idea what the keys in the bowl meant. Let's bring them on. Dr. Laura Buchanan and her husband, Dr. Matthew Buchanan. How are you guys doing?
Hey, we are doing great. Thanks so much for having us on.
Doing great. Thanks.
Do you guys even know the keys in the bowl thing? It was kind of a 70s thing.
Is that a swingers thing where you gotta like?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm tangentially aware.
Yeah. Your people your age just don't know that. But in the 70s, it was like the middle of the free sex move, like everybody, women in the early 70s were burning their bras and we can love our bodies and do, we're in control and we're large and in charge. And, at least women thought that at the time. And then they figured out, wait, semen is really like glue. Once we have it, we want to be with just that person, so they had to figure that whole thing out. But in the mean, what they would do is you would go to these swingers parties and everybody would throw their house keys or car keys in a bowl and then mix them around. You just reach in and pick out keys. Whoever keys you got, that's who you were with. That's the way it worked.
Wow.
Different times, Vinny.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the reason I even bring that up is because I'm nuts. And number two, you guys are young. You guys are babies in the doctor game.
Yeah.
And that's why when Tro Kalayjian said, I think it was Tro that told me you got to have these guys on. I looked you guys up and went, oh, these guys are babies. I want to learn what they're teaching the new doctors. First off, what are your ages, if you don't mind?
No, yeah, I'm 29.
31.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. You're close to my daughter's age, who just became an attorney. Like literally, she's freshly minted, still wet behind the ears. And she's off being an attorney. You guys now run the world. I don't know if you really understand that yet. You probably don't. You're sitting there going, geez, what's this guy talking? You guys are now running the world. And it's up to you, in my estimation, to not turn the ship around, but first you have to right the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow get it to tack around and go in an about face.
Yeah.
Speaking of my daughter, when she was in college at UVA, somewhere along the way, I think it was a senior year, maybe first year law school, she met this guy who was also a post-grad. And he was going for a medical degree. And he was early on in the process, and he came from a family of doctors. And he had a certain amount of hubris about him. And I think doctors have to have that, because you're not the guys we want to have second guessing yourself, right? It's called a practice. Mm-hmm. And we can get into all of the stuff about how the hospitals, or not the hospitals, but the insurance companies are controlling you guys now, telling you guys what to do, which I think is wrong. And we could get into that a bit. Mm-hmm. But this guy had the hubris of, he would hear my daughter used to work for the podcast, and she would have to, just curate all of this information and write the notes and the whole thing. And a lot of times he would be there at night when I had people like, Gary Taubes on, or Nina Teicholz, or Eric Westman, or, Gary Fedke. I could go down the list. It's a who's who list who would come on this Friday show. And he would go, well, those doctors are wrong. Those doctors are they're so wrong. This is a kid with no education yet, already falling into, and Tallulah would ask him, why are they so wrong? say, well, my dad's a doctor and my mom's a doctor. Just like you guys, if you had him, that kid, you would have this kid with this hubris. And they would never do that. I mean, they would never. It was all this crazy hubris. But somewhere along the way, the kids started listening, because even though they broke up about a year and a half after that, maybe 2 years, I ran into him in the gym. Now he's getting ready. He's going into residency. He's doing all that stuff. And he's working out. He's trying to do whatever he can to stay in shape before he drops dead and goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And he came up to me and apologized and said, those things I thought you were so wrong about. Turns out I started looking into it. Turns out there's a lot of validity to what you were saying and what all of these doctors were saying, the William Davises of the world, the Perlmutters, you name it. They've been on this show.
Yeah.
Right. So it's good to know that he felt one way at the beginning of med school, but at some point he changed his mind. Right. He got hold, and it wasn't me. I wasn't going to change his mind. He thought I was an idiot. Right. But something got him to change his mind. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
What's it like right now in medical school? Where did you guys go to school, by the way, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Undergrad and grad.
So went to University of South Florida for undergrad, and then went to University of Florida for medical school, where I met this wonderful guy.
I went to University of Florida for undergrad and med school.
Oh, so you were a lifer there, right?
Yeah. Double gear.
Yeah, you just went all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys met there. By the way, cute couple. It's unreal. It's like these guys. You guys have kids yet?
No.
You're gonna have some awesome looking kids.
Thank you.
Guys, most people don't watch my videos, but if you want to see these guys, she's got this skin that's almost opaque. And he, this big square jawed guy, and I'm like looking at this guy going, look at these guys. They got all the looks. I mean, you guys.
The low carb diet for you.
Yeah, look, you want to look good like these people, go eat what they're eating, because I want some of what they're having. Let's start with you, Matthew. What was it like? One of you guys is a year ahead of the other. Is that it? Or
Yeah. So I finished residency this past July.
okay, and you've been out in the world for a bit, Matthew?
So essentially we started residency at the same time. I was an emergency medicine intern. So I did one intern year and I switched to family medicine. So I have about 6 months left. Laura has been out working with Dr. Tro for about now 6 months already. But we've been essentially practicing what we preach all through residency. We were able to make it work throughout a residency clinic.
So let's start with that. How did you guys happen upon low carb or any of it? Either one of you can start and give me the story.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. So in medical school, we had a 2-week nutrition course, and that was the extent of our education on nutrition. And during that time, we learned classic vitamin deficiencies, but didn't learn anything practical about how to either treat or prevent medical conditions with dietary or lifestyle changes. And I did learn that saturated fat was bad for you during that 2 weeks. That was definitely emphasized. So, the kind of the classic, some old mantra, unfortunately. But after that was like, okay, there's so much more to nutrition clearly than this, and started doing my own deep dive and just trying to find things. And fortunately stumbled on the Low Carb MD podcast, read Nina Teicholz's Big Fat Surprise, Gary Taubes, Jason Fung. And the more I read and listened to these podcasts, I was like, this is it. I mean, these people are changing lives with lifestyle, which is, by far the better way to do it than trying to fix things with tons of medications.
Yeah. Let me break in there just for a second. Jason Fung, folks, if you want to go back and hear his latest podcast with me, it's coming out the Friday right before this one. I'm not sure which Friday any of these are coming out, but I just record Jason and I go back almost 9 years now. It's crazy. So, you can mention Gary Taubes. Gary's probably written 10 books on the subject now, if I'm guessing right.
Yeah,
I consider him a good friend. I tell people, if you want to read any of Gary's books, start with not good calorie. You guys would like good calorie, bad calorie, the best, because you're science brains, right? I tell people skip ahead and just go to Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, because it's kind of the Reader's Digest version of what science nerds like. But if you just want to get an overall, like if I have someone who's a naysayer, I send them right to Nina Teicholz's Big Fat Surprise, because she literally shows you, hey, look, they extrapolated this from these studies, but here's what they did not tell you. Right? Isn't that the beauty of that book?
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, go on. Go from there.
So from there, I during my 4th year of medical school, I actually got a continuous glucose monitor for the first time. And at this point, we were lower carb, but not fully low carb, I'll say. And I was also trying to get 50 grams of fiber, make sure I hit that every day. And I was eating these, quote, healthy oatmeal fiber cookies. And
why, Laura? Why were you trying to get the fiber in back then?
That this was, still some of that older dogma. You get as much fiber as possible, you're going to lower your cancer risk. A lot of epidemiology studies show, higher fiber improved outcomes, but it's a lot of just correlations that are not good data at all.
Right.
And so, I ate these cookies, my sugar was going to 180, and I had been doing this every day for months. And that was a second wake up call. And at that point, I'd already, believed and seen low carb, hearing about the success from the book and podcast. But after seeing that for myself, I mean, it was just,
I don't want you to blaze over what you just said, because all of the big food companies now are trying to make keto products by saying, hey, you can subtract the fiber from the total amount of carbohydrates. You are eating something to get fiber in, a large amount of fiber, and your blood sugar was going to what again? I just want to hear that number 180. What was that number?
180.
Yeah, 180, and she was eating fiber, folks. Listen to it. Don't just blaze over in these podcasts. You see, I like to make these points because people listen to these podcasts. They're on subways. They're driving their cars. They're going to work. They're thinking about this, that, and the other thing. The kids, did I get them? I want to make that point very strong. When you see, oh, this is keto bread, which is an oxymoron, and they go, oh, you can subtract the fiber from the total amount of carb. No. Laura, a medical doctor, was doing this thinking she was getting more fiber. For what reason? I don't know.
We were told it was healthy.
Yeah. You were told a lot of things in college.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They told you guys a lot. I was just showing an ad. I do this on my Instagram, and I put an ad on the television behind me. And I was doing the one from the 70s. Not the 70s, 1984. How old were you guys in 84? Were you born yet?
Not maybe that's a decade before my time about.
Decade before your time. In 1984, Special K, the cereal by Kellogg's, they used to run an ad called, if you can pinch an inch, you're too fat. If you can pinch an inch in 1984. You'll see this. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see this in 2 days. It might be coming out tomorrow. I just hand it into my lady and she puts them up. An inch. If literally they show this really skinny woman and she pinches her waist and she pinches, her fingers are about, let's call it a half an inch apart. She's going, uh-oh, pinch an inch. I'm too heavy. And then she grabs her husband or whoever's sitting there, and it's about an inch and a half of, too fat. This was 1984.
Yeah.
If you could pinch an inch. I was the first person, because I put it in my first movie, Fatter Documentary, who said, hey, go back. Now everyone shows it on the internet. I showed it in my movie. Go back to Woodstock, 1969. Find the fat person. All right. These are not triathlon runners. Triathlon wasn't invented then. These were not marathon runners. People in America didn't run marathons back then. Jogging came around after that. right?
Yeah.
Nobody was fat. Now you can go to a marathon at the 4-hour mark and you have people waddling across. These are people who got themselves in incredible shape to run. You can't outrun what we're eating. What say you?
A bad diet.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I've seen numerous people with eating essentially what is the standard American diet, which is high fat, high carb, high salt, high palatability. You really can't stop eating it. And they can do all of the cycling, all of the spinning they want, and they still have prediabetes. Their A1C is above normal. And if your A1C is above, the cutoff is 5.7, but I think there's some data out there that shows that that's not even totally optimal. But if it's above that, you're not metabolically healthy. And externally, you may look fine, but internally, we know that the body is not processing those carbohydrates correctly, despite all the exercise these people are doing.
I talk about this ad all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can find it really fast. People are going to get sick because I run it all the time, but it's very important. I want to run it for you guys if I can find it, because I want you to hear what they're saying in the ad. They're showing all the long versions of it. Let's see. Let's go with this one. Are you ready?
Ready.
You ready to hear this? And I'm going to stop it because I've done videos on this also. So I'm going to stop it at some point. Oh, this might not be it. This is one of those things where they make you do something. Let's see.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic. In a study with Ozempic, a majority of adults lowered their blood sugar and reached an A1C of less than 7 and maintained.
Okay. Ozempic.
Yeah.
By the way, you don't use Ozempic first. You don't even use it second. I don't know if you guys know this as doctors, but because you guys don't get to be doctors anymore, they're telling people on television, go tell your doctor you want this. So they got the ads telling the layperson to go tell your doctor to give you the Ozempic. This is the third thing. Ozempic is number 3. You're already on metformin and something else. You still can't get your A1Cs down. So they're telling you, hey, go tell your doctor you need some Ozempic, right?
Yeah.
And what did you just hear in that ad? It could get your A1Cs down to as low as 7. So you're
uncontrolled.
Uncontrolled. You're on a third drug for the same problem, and you're still perfectly sick. Now you have 3 drugs that all have their own side effects. What say you?
I had a patient during residency come to me, brand new diagnosis of diabetes, type 2. His A1C was above 14. And typically if your A1C is above 10, then it's recommended you go ahead and start them on insulin. Checked an insulin level. He was making his own insulin still, so his pancreas was still functioning. And I was like, guidelines should say I should put you on insulin, but there's another option. You could go low carb keto.
Right.
And he said, oh, well, let's do that. I don't want to be on medicine. 3 months later, his A1C was less than 7. No
Wow.
medications, 14 down to less than 7.
I like, yeah. Eric Westman, I know when he was on your show, he said, we both worked with him at Duke. At the end of his talks, he always says, stop on by the clinic, see what I do. We did it as residents. And that's what really solidified it for me, because I saw the guru, the guy that I look up to, and he was doing it for like 20, 30 patients a day. I know he said on your show, you can cure diabetes in a week. We could have a prevalence of 0% in this country in 1 week if we did low carb ketogenic diets.
And he got that saying from the guy who taught him, who's
Atkins.
also after Atkins, his name was Alan. I can't think of his name right now, but there's this other doctor who never goes and makes the rounds anymore. He's from Tulane, and his name is slipping my mind right now. And Eric is a big fan of that guy. And we mentioned him on the show. I wish I can remember his name right now, but you can literally, I've had people, I'm not a doctor, And I tell people when they call me for these consults, is, listen, you need to understand I am not a medical professional, and what I'm giving you is not medical advice. But if you cut out all sugars and grains right now, the next time you go in and get your A1Cs checked, it's going to be significantly lower. I've had people go from, I've had 14s and that sort of thing, but I've had people go from 10 down to 5.6, which is pre-diabetic, right? You're still on the fence. You can't mess up at that point. And within the next 3 months, folks, the reason we're saying 3 months is because A1Cs, you check them it's an average of 3 months. Your blood tells the story. Am I saying that correctly, doctors?
Yeah.
Okay. You go another 3 months and they're down to 4.9, 5.1, 4.8, just crazy numbers, right? No drugs, no drugs. And by the way, when they go to their doctors in some cases and say, can you take me off of metformin? And the doctor will go, no, if you do that, it's going to pop right back up. And in those cases, I send them to Philip Ovadia, I send them to Tro Kalayjian, I send them to, who's the other one? Tony Hampton. All these doctors around the country, Brett Shear, I send them to all of these doctors and tell them, listen, this guy needs and they just take them right off of it legally. I think they titrate them off and they're healed. Why are we not shouting this from the rooftops? And is your generation going to be able to do that?
So
that's my question.
Yeah. So we kind of found it through Low Carb MD. I think it's easier for every generation of medical student to actually come across this information. We still don't have a standardized, rigorous curriculum for medical students or other clinicians to actually learn about this stuff. The other thing, Eric Westman's full of like a lot of great quotes. He said, if you have a lifestyle textbook, that is essentially a whole food plant-based textbook. Lifestyle in medicine almost always means vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean maybe, but certainly whole food plant-based. There is no place right now where a low carb ketogenic diet, therapeutic carbohydrate restriction really fits into the curriculum for what we learned. We learned it all through things like your podcast, other podcasts, and a lot of like the SMHP metabolic summits and low carb Boca as well. So what we're trying to do, I think what really needs to happen is we need to have our version of ACLM. ACLM is the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they are the whole food plant-based people. They give free textbooks to medical students. And we have the podcast. I think we have more podcasts and better podcasts, but we need more just involvement with the medical students and giving them textbooks, giving them the guidelines, and letting them know that how successful this is.
Well, I couldn't agree more, but we're still considered kooks. We're still considered outliers, tinfoil hats. They put us in the same, in some cases, like a QAnon type of, oh, these people are nuts, they're crazy, but the results are there.
Yeah. I can say this, Vinny, real quick about that.
Sure.
It's really important that you guys do the work you do. I can use the example of Laura because I'm a year behind her in residency. Laura was doing all of this crazy stuff, like having people do lifestyle changes first before putting them on insulin, or taking people off of insulin, or getting fasting insulins, getting calcium scans and things like that. And she had to argue, or really have a conversation with the attending every time she ordered something like that. But when I came through a year later, everybody had the deal. They saw the results, and I basically just did what I did and followed in her footsteps. So you are trailblazing at every new institution, at every new level, at every new place. But really, once one person does that, there's this knowledge that's left behind. And I think the needle is moving. It's slow, and it's happening over the course of decades, unfortunately, but it is moving.
Yeah, Nina and I have had some pretty depressing talks amongst ourselves, not with the mic on, where we wonder if we've made any difference whatsoever. My book was a big deal. Her book was a big deal. this podcast. I've done 3 movies now, 3 documentaries on, and you wonder, you know, Nina, I think, is the only person that's been in all 3 of my documentaries. She's become like a sister to me. And, you know, we wonder if we're making any ground. But then when I hear stuff like this, it makes me feel good. You know, look, I mean, Dean Ornish got in there with President Clinton, right? Way back when. And, you know, when you get politicians, that means these are guys making policy. And you have Dean Ornish going, hey, this is the deal. Then that becomes the deal. We literally have people right now in the world that's running the world. That doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean. These are the policymakers around the world who are literally going, oh yeah, cow farts are ruining the ozone layer. There is no proof of that whatsoever, that cow gas, ruminant gas, is doing anything. I live next door to a tree expert. The guy's written 8 or 10 books on trees around the world. He was a tenured professor at UVA. Guy's become a good friend of mine, Hank. Let's call him Hank because, well, that's his name. And Hank will be the first to tell you that the animal that causes the most methane, or as my British wife would say, methane. Do you guys know what it is? The number 1 methane producing animal on the planet. Take a guess.
Yeah.
Go on, guess. I need some guesses here.
Yeah.
This is where you're gonna find out how bad I am at actual.
No, there's no wrong. There's no wrong answer.
Chicken, mice, I'll throw out.
I'll say, is it like decomposing trees? Maybe, I don't know. It's not really an animal.
It's not an animal, but
yeast. I don't know. That's decomposing trees. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what it is. It has to do with trees or wood in general. It's termites.
Termites, yeah.
Termites are the number 1 methane producing animal on the planet. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yet the vegans aren't going after the termites, right?
Yeah. They are making insect burgers, I think. So
right. But they're not going, but you see where the problem is. And, you know, I had Frank Mitlerner in my 3rd movie, who's one of the foremost authorities on the planet, who will tell you that the methane that comes off of all animals, including termites, is swallowed up and regenerated within a 10-year period. The stuff that comes out of the tailpipe of your car or the energy plant that's making energy or what have you, unless it's nuclear energy, I won't even get into that. That's where the methane problems are, right? Because once that's in the atmosphere, it's up there for thousands of years, right? It doesn't regenerate the same as methane does, right? All these other CO2 carbons that are up there, they don't break down. They're like plastic, if you will, in the atmosphere. They're there, right? Yet we're making policy now based on global warming, based on cattle. Yeah, cattle. And by the way, you'll go to these summits and everything else, and the leaders of the free world are going, oh yeah, we eat less meat. It's healthier and it's going to save the planet. This is where we are.
Yeah, I mean, in New York, yeah.
Go on.
Sorry, in New York now with schools, they're doing an experiment where they're going to give kids meatless Mondays.
Oh, they've been trying to push that for years.
Yeah, well, it's happening. And they're also trying to do something special on Fridays. So it might be 2 times a week that kids won't have access to meat, which is really, I mean, this truly is just an experiment.
Yeah.
There's on a lot of kids.
Beyond just metabolic health for that too, the amount of iron deficiency, let alone iron deficiency causing like a low blood count, is astronomical in kids nowadays. I don't know what it is about the certain food supply, or if they're just not, you know, if just what kids are eating in general, but the data regarding the worsening iron deficiency of every population, not just vegans and vegetarians, but even people who eat meat, it's surprising. By the time you can actually see a lot of issues with iron deficiency, it's like you need it to make brain neurotransmitters, you need it to make dopamine. It can cause things like restless leg syndrome when you're going to bed. Like this, it's a big deal. And it's not even randomized. It's just a trial. And we don't have any real good data that it's going to what the outcomes are going to be. It's
kind of like when they released the U.S. dietary guidelines a long time ago, just a big experiment, and
here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you guys know how that experiment went and how it came about? You guys know the history on that?
I know the McGovern committee was a couple of years before the USDA guidelines. And then I know a lot of it was founded on what Ansel Keys was doing a couple of decades beforehand. It's all just based on pretty shoddy nutritional epidemiology, especially at that time. And unfortunately, those kind of cohort studies haven't gotten a lot better. I know Nina Teicholz goes over a lot of that. Like, she goes over that really well.
Yeah. And the way it all happened, in my first movie, Fat, a Documentary, we started in 1865 and came up through, I just showed the history through the years. And the real problem started when Eisenhower had a heart attack. We blamed it on, we meaning Ansel Keys, who came up with the K ration. Most people don't know that in the military, the K ration was Ansel Keys. So he was kind of a superstar of a nutritionist back in those days. And so Dwight D. Eisenhower has a heart attack, and, he was a beloved president. And it was like, oh my God, if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. And the part we weren't talking about was that the guy was a chain smoker, up to 3 packs a day, 60 some odd cigarettes per day. That's what he admitted to. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's not look at that. Let's look at meat, because Ansel Keys says, look, he's a meat eater. It has to be the meat. There is no study at that point showing that meat or saturated fat is a problem. As a matter of fact, John Lutkin over in England was saying the exact opposite. He was going, wait a minute, it's sugar. If you look at the amount of sugar we were eating in 1865, which was less than a pound per person per year, based on seasonal fruit and whatever you can get a hold to, when we had no disease whatsoever, no heart disease, no nothing. More people died from breaking a leg than anything else, right? The world was more dangerous back then. Well, Ansel Keys starts down this road, but he couldn't really get a stronghold, right? He tried for 10 years, and pretty much everyone was saying, you're a bit of a nut, telling people not to eat meat. Are you crazy? And they were saying what you're saying over there, Matthew, iron, B12, all these things, right? Well, the McGovern Committee, do you know why it was started? Do you know the history behind that?
I'm not sure of the original.
We were trying to get another Kennedy elected, Robert F. Kennedy. So McGovern was helping his friend. And I don't do politics on this show, but the way the Democrats, I don't care if you're Democratic or Republican, I don't care. I don't play favorites. But one of the tools, and I think it's a brilliant thing that the Democrats do, is they tell poor people, we're gonna give you stuff. Just keep voting for us, and we'll make more stuff free, right? And they still do that today. So it's just how the Democratic Party has always gotten people to vote for them. And so they went, how can we give them more free stuff? We need to figure out a way. And you see, back then, you couldn't just do what they do now and go, hey, COVID, let's just give everybody extra money. Hey, we're just going to forgive your debt. Now they just do it, right? You got college debt? No problem.
Yeah.
We'll give you, here's 10 grand. They're still doing that. I love that they do that. It's one of these amazing things to watch. But back then they had to have some kind of reason. So they wanted to figure out something called food stamps, right? Now we call it something else. I don't know what they call it now, WIC program or something like that.
Yeah, WIC, EBT.
WIC. Yeah. So, but back then they called it, and so they wanted to study poor people in the South, more directly, poor Black people in the South. So they formed the McGovern Committee to do that. Now, you kids are going to love this. Uncle Vinny's giving a history lesson tonight. You know how we have committees now? Like right now, there's like the January 6th committee, right? And that's going on right now. And it was on television for a couple of nights, and I think it's still there, but it's, you know, it's going to get disbanded like in 5 minutes or something. I don't know. Okay. This committee, this McGovern committee, just went on and on and on and on, right? They figured out food stamps at some point, but the committee didn't stop meeting. They had regular meetings. Ansel Keys sees this and goes, hey, they're not even talking about poor Black people anymore. They're just talking about, they're arguing about food. Let me get in there. Ansel Keys got in there and started, he's still a superstar, right? He got Ike off of saturated fat, red meat. So he's a superstar. He comes in, and when the committee ended after 10 years of meeting, 10 years, they literally, I have this in my first movie, they're throwing their hands up going, pick one. We don't care. We just need to stop meeting. Just pick one. And they said, okay, we're going to say saturated fat is bad, eat more vegetables, and for you, Laura, have more fiber.
Yeah.
And then we adopted, I think the Swedes or someone had something of a pyramid, and we went, oh, that looks about right. So we just kind of took theirs, and we literally put all these grains on the bottom and just kept building up from there. And that's when the problem started. As soon as we had something for people to look at and we said, this is how you eat, everybody went, no problem. Here we go. And that's where we are today. There's your story.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. The other thing that really kills me nowadays is you go down the supermarket aisle and you see Pop-Tarts that say whole grain, and there's like a drop of whole grain in a sea of sugar. And the food companies are able to put these signs on these packages saying healthy, whole grains, and people are indoctrinated or just inundated with that messaging that whole grains are good, whole grains are healthy. So what are they going to reach for? They're going to reach for the whole grain Pop-Tart. You see it time and time again with juice over soda. I have so many patients of mine saying juice is healthy. Juice is healthier than Pepsi. Apple juice has apples in it. It's not. What we're seeing right now is people are buying this food and it makes them sick. And then they pay for the insurance for the inevitable complications that makes them go to the hospital. And then they have to declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is like the number one cause of our health dollars, are the number one cause of bankruptcy in this country. So it's this massive transfer of wealth from people thinking they're doing the right healthy thing based on those recommendations and based on these food companies putting this on the packaging, and they just get sicker.
Yeah. And look, I mean, we've been sold that bill of goods for so many years. I mean, we have a problem of, well, we have several problems.
How much time do you got?
Yeah, but look, we've been doing that forever. We've been doing that sort of thing forever, right? You look back at you can look at CW Post or Quaker. Quaker, one of those two, I can't remember. They did an ad campaign back in the early 1900s. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day because they had something to sell. CW Post came up with something called Postum. Are you guys even familiar with that?
Yeah. There was somebody gave a great talk on this where the Seventh-day Adventists in the initial kind of up there in General Mills up in Michigan, and having their kind of hands in the pot of the making a lot of those initial dietary guidelines too, in the Post and Kellogg's and et cetera.
Yeah, look, it's amazing what Kellogg's was able to do. I mean, and when I said we started my movie in 1865, I really did mean that. I'm guessing you guys haven't seen Fat, a documentary, right?
I have.
We have.
Yeah.
All right. So, I talked about Ellen G. White and the Seventh-day Adventists. I mean, out of whole cloth, she woke up one morning and said, God came to me in my sleep. And my first question would be, why didn't they put this woman in an insane asylum? You know, if you start saying God came to me in my sleep nowadays, they would get you help. But in 1865, they simply said, what did God have to tell you? God told me don't eat anything with a face, no sentient beings. But it was more sinister than that, because the Seventh-day Adventist Church didn't believe in masturbation. Most religions don't believe in that, but they were pretty serious about it. And, you know, no sex outside of marriage. And even in marriage, you're not supposed to have sex unless you're procreating. And they had all these weird rules, right? And they figured that, oh, when you have red meat, you're more virile.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole iron thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
More red blood cells, you're more virile, you know,
Mhm.
you're feeling better. You want to get yourself some, right? So they went, oh, wait, if we could get people off of this stuff, they don't want to have sex as often. And that was their whole game plan. And when John Kellogg, once he became a doctor and the whole thing, and started figuring out, he was the guy that figured out dextrinization. Most people don't know that. You know, taking a grain and cooking it enough to where it just becomes a sugar, same thing it does in your body. He was like, oh, we can do this, right? We can do this. And that became a problem, right? That just became a real issue. And then you can follow that through history. But it's exactly what you're saying. You know, we're told orange juice is good. You know, my buddy Adam Carolla always tells me, yeah, that was a time in my life when I just ate grape nuts with orange juice in it because I thought milk was bad.
Mm-hmm. People
Did that. Can you imagine eating that today and what that must taste like?
Oh, no. Terrible.
Yeah, but that's what was going on. So let me do a quick ad here, and then I want to hear for a few minutes, as young doctors, what you guys are thinking about doing, maybe planning on doing. I know you're working with Tro. I want to know how that works and what's going on in that direction. Before I do that, I want to tell you guys about Villa Capelli olive oil. I talk about it all the time. In this country, just like with a lot of things, you're able to lie on an olive oil label. You can say it's pure, unadulterated, 100% pure, virgin olive oil, first press, cold press, you know, whatever you want to say on it. And it can still be cut up to 40% with what? Oh, nothing, just seed oils. Not a good idea. The way around that is to look, there are other good olive oils out there. I just don't have a whole list of them. You can go check out the UC Berkeley olive oil study. You can go read the book Extra Virginity. We've had that guy on the show. Or you could just go to Villa Capelli and know that you're getting 100% pure olive oil every single time. If you put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, you'll get 10% off. 10% off at Villa Capelli. If you spend more than $125 after the discount code, because they have all kinds of other good stuff at Villa Capelli. You can get yourself a 3-liter 10 that runs around 90, maybe $100. And you get yourself a few herbs, whatever. Next thing you know, bada bing, bada boom, you're at 140 something dollars. You get your 10% off. Now you're getting free shipping. You get the 10% off, and you have the world's best olive oil being shipped right to your door. Folks, go get it. VillaCapelli.com, or you could go to VinnieTortorich.com and click through the banner. Either way, it works. Go check it out. Villa Capelli, let them know we sent you. Put in my name, Vinnie, no wimpy Y. We're talking to two wonderful doctors, Dr. Laura and Dr. Matthew Buchanan. It almost seems like you guys should have your own talk show. Dr. Laura.
Dr. Laura, Dr. Matt.
Podcasts may happen in the future.
Low carb all the time.
Low carb. Oh, yeah. If you guys don't get a podcast, that means you would be the only people in the country that don't have a podcast.
Our voice needs to be heard. Exactly.
Yeah, we need another podcast, especially on low carb. You know, it's funny when we started this podcast, there were like 190,000 podcasts in the world total. Now it's like 2-point-something million.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, it just fractionates more and more and more. But yeah, no, the more podcasts, the merrier. You guys just came through school. You told me that you guys are learning, at least they're kind of opening up a bit. What's it going to look like for you? And I'm guessing if you're working with Tro, you're not going to be working with these insurance companies. Can you explain how all of that works?
Yeah, the insurance company stuff?
Well, all of it, working with someone like Tro versus working for, a big conglomerate, like if you went and worked for Martha Jefferson or UVA Hospital or one of those, if you didn't follow the guidelines, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. But you guys, are you going to do that, or are you going to do something different? What am I hearing here?
Yeah, I'll tell you first what the old paradigm looks like and why it needs to change. So typically, primary care doctors will see about 20 patients in a full day. So 10 in the morning, 10 in the afternoon. It can go all the way up to 40, depending on how much your employer hates you. Typically, those are about 10 to 15-minute visits, which really is just enough time to ask if the medications are having any side effects, and then to screen the patient if they need more medications, to like add on an A1C and see if we can go up on the Ozempic, right? It's really the current system, I can't really stress this enough, is not really set up for what truly needs to happen and to really turn this country around. You look at an intervention just like Virta Health. I'm going to let Laura talk more about what Dr. Tro is doing. But if you look at Virta Health, they have a intervention in their paper. They call it the continuous care intervention. In a residency clinic, which is generally almost like an attending clinic, I can see a patient for 15 minutes about once every month or a month and a half. Virta Health is having all of this data coming in all of the time. Virta Health is this company, if people don't know, that actually uses low-carb ketogenic diets to reverse and put into remission, essentially cure, depending on what your criteria is, type 2 diabetes and obesity in their patients. And they have a goal.
We talk about those guys a lot on the show. That's Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek, and they got together with Sami Inkinen and his wife and created Virta Health, and a great organization. But go on.
Yeah, so I mean that's like more names you're naming of just the giants in the field that have really inspired us too. So Virta Health has this continuous care intervention, and that's really how you have to go about improving metabolic health for a lot of the country. There's such a huge inertia of the current food environment where if you're not helping patients with their day-to-day food choices and helping them know what foods are doing what to their body, whether that's by CGMs or health coaching, it is impossible. I'll just say really, really difficult to undo all of the damage that's currently done in our food environment, done by Nestle, PepsiCo, all of these big companies. So in the old paradigm, 15-minute medicine, you have your medications exactly as you said. You have metformin, medication B, and then you have Ozempic, and then you have insulin. And then eventually, unfortunately, if their A1C is still going up, they're going to have the complications, and they're going to need the consultants, and they're going to get a heart attack and get amputations. And on any time on our service in the hospital, we'll have 2 diabetic complications, either amputations or issues with like gastroparesis. Unfortunately, their stomach stops working and they can't eat anything. So there was a study that was also recently released where PCPs, primary care physicians, need 26 hours in a day to do all of the guideline-driven mandates that are foisted upon us. And there's another study where 1 out of 5 physicians are planning on leaving the field of medicine in the next 5 years. I really, for the old paradigm of medicine, I really think we're at this turning point in this next decade. I think COVID kind of really hastened it a little bit, but we're at an inflection point where something's going to have to change. And that's kind of where Dr. Tro comes in.
Yeah. Tro is one of the early adapters. Obviously, Eric Westman, aforementioned Eric Westman, Tony Hampton, all of these guys got tired of just throwing medicine at people. Brian Linskis, who's with Tro and company. And, I could go on and on and on with these doctors, and they were the guys that were thinking about getting out of medicine. These type of people, they were like, I can't do this anymore, and, they looked around. I had a doctor on just a couple of weeks ago who was talking about, Dr. Stroman, he became one of these concierge doctors where you only take on X number of patients. You know, they pay a couple of $1,000s a year to that doctor, and there's a whole workup. And, you know, I think more doctors are going to have to go in that direction. The first time I even heard of that kind of medicine, I was still in Beverly Hills, right?
Mhm.
And those doctors were charging $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 per year per patient. That's where people can afford that. And I was like, wow, this is really cool if you have that kind of money. But some of these doctors are doing concierge care at a much lower price now.
Yep.
You know, much lower. And, you know, why not? Why not? I mean, if you can do it and you can afford to go to these guys, which brings up the biggest problem. The people who are going to get the best health care at some point are the people that have, you don't have to have rich money. I know that's another thing politicians like to go, oh, these fat cats. But people, you know, an average couple with no kids making plus $150,000 a year, they're going to go get better doctors, right? And who's going to be left holding the bag are the poor people, right? And once again, you know, it's kind of like I've been yelling about these gas prices. The people who are affected are the people who need gas the most to get to work. You know, the guy who cuts grass for a living that needs to fill up all these lawnmowers and fill up his truck to carry his lawnmowers to a yard. You know, it's going to be the same thing with medicine. The poorest of us will get left behind, right? Everyone else is going to go, screw that. I got one life here. You know, I'm going to go get this kind of good care. Do you guys see it moving in that same direction?
I already see it, unfortunately. I think there are already tiers of healthcare in this country. And it's like you said, it's only going to get worse.
I had a friend tell me the other day, he called me and said, he goes, yeah, I have a kidney stone for the first time in my life, in his 50s. And I said, oh, geez. And he goes, yeah, it's pretty big and it's painful. I'm on this medication just to make the pain go away. And I'm going to go in and get a procedure done. They're going to bust it up and then it's going to come out. So he goes to get the procedure and he's there and they hand him a paper to sign. It's like, what's this? He goes, oh, this procedure is going to cost you $5,000. And he's like, well, my insurance. And they were like, oh, no, this is what the insurance won't cover. You're on the hook for $5,000. He's in the hospital he's got the gown on. And he was like, hand me my clothes back. I'm not paying for this. And he left the hospital in pain. And they put him back on the medication. And my question to him is, what are you going to do? And by the way, this guy has the money to pay for it, but he goes, you know what? That $5,000 is my backup money. That's my backup money. And I even said to him, it's like, look, you know, can I give you the $5,000? Not loan. I'll give it to you. He said, no, I'm not going to take money. And he goes, I have the money. I just don't want to spend it on that. What if something else happens to me or my wife? You know, we need that money, right? This guy's walking around in pain and they're giving him medication now just to handle that. Does that sound right to you?
No.
Absolutely not. I want anybody who's listening. One of the things that politicians did that actually made sense, and unfortunately they followed it to the letter of the law, not really the spirit of the law. All hospitals need to publish somewhere on their website a price of everything they offer in the hospital. So I looked at one of the hospitals in our local area, and I want you to guess what the most expensive thing was that they charge at this hospital. Now, this is like a wholesale price. So this is what it's hard to understand if this is what they bill insurance or if this is what they actually tell patients. But I think it's what they would tell somebody who doesn't have insurance, how much it costs. The procedure is what's called CAR-T therapy. So it's a very new cancer treatment. You essentially use your blood to attack your cancer cells. Right. So it's very involved. Any guess on how much that would be?
Well, I did go through leukemia and mine was in 2007. And I remember them telling me that back then, my cancer, you know, insurance paid for a lot of it. I had to come out of pocket a lot of money too, but I think the whole thing was close to $450,000. So I'm going to say this is well over 1.5 million.
2 million. Yep.
Yeah.
2 million for one infusion.
One infusion.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So if the insurance company doesn't, so they're not charging that to insurance companies. Insurance companies are getting a big break on that, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. You're kind of shafted if you don't have insurance, because that's the non-negotiated rate. When the hospitals, they'll give this highball number, and then the insurance company will give this amazingly lowball number, and then they meet somewhere kind of probably a quarter of the way down that. And then the people who don't have insurance are left with this bill because there's nobody fighting for them. These pricing guides that these hospitals publish, they're huge Excel spreadsheets that are really listed by like ICD-10 codes, so they're impossible for the average person to read.
Right.
And you can go through though, and if you go by the Excel tab for cost, you'll see like a total knee replacement is like a $500,000 all told, like operating room and all of the hardware type surgery. And that all of that stuff, that is so far downstream of where we want to be, of where we need to be, where not even having arthritis in the first place, like working on people's like excessive adiposity way earlier and just keeping them out of the operating rooms. But I think that's really terrifying to some people who make a lot of money out of this.
You know, I remember one of the things that, you know, at the time in 2007, you guys were mere babies. That was before like Obamacare and all that stuff, right? So none of that existed yet. And for a guy like me, a privateer who got my own insurance every year, I had the best Blue Cross PPO you can get, right? So I get cancer. Now my out of pocket and my deductible and everything was like $2,500. That's all I was supposed to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, by the way, on December 31st, that's the last day, the new year starts over again, right? They can hit you for that number again. Well, I got it in the summer and the bills started coming in, and a lot of the bills are meant to screw you up. I'm a guy who could keep things straight. You get like tons and tons, reams of paper. This is not a bill. This is not a bill. This is a bill. This is not a bill. This is not a bill. This is a bill. Just tons of this stuff, right? And I'm a guy who can do movies, right? I know how to stay on top of stuff, right? So I see this and I start noticing that I'm now paying way past my deductible and my out of pocket. And I started asking questions about this. And the hospital, they will not give you real answers. What they'll tell you is the insurance didn't cover this. If you don't pay us, we'll send it to a collection agency and then you'll get dinged on your credit. And I was like, wow. So these bills weren't that big. I was a single guy. I was, you know, I started selling stuff, by the way. I sold one of my motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
I started selling that first year because I wasn't making money at the time. You know, I was sick with cancer. And I remember that first year, looking at the end of the year, I had spent $10,000 when my deductible was $2,500. And I went, wow, I paid a lot more. And then the new year started and I paid another 10 grand. So I was talking to my friend who works for, I'll give the hospital, Cedars-Sinai in California, in Los Angeles. And I said, what happens to people not like me, people that don't have the extra cash hanging around? You know, I didn't have any kids in school. I didn't have any of that. My daughter's my stepdaughter. I hadn't even met her mom yet. I had met her, but we hadn't fallen in love yet. And I said, what happens? What happens to people that don't have that money? She goes, oh, they just write it off. And I said, well, how can I get mine written off? She goes, she started laughing. She goes, what's your credit rating? And I said, well, you know, it's really high. She goes, what is it? I said, all three of them are over 800. All three, right? So my average is over 800 credit score. She goes, yeah, they're going to keep coming after you because they know people like you will never hurt your credit score and you will eventually pay up. The person that's got a 650 or 500 or 500, whatever it is, they'll eventually go, that person doesn't care about their credit anyway. What do they have to lose? They'll just go, screw it, but send it to a collection agency. I don't care. I don't have the money. I'm not paying it. Right. So they literally go after people. They have your social security number. They look you up. They go, oh, guy's living outside of Beverly Hills. He's got a credit score of over 800. They don't know that I'm a single proprietor at the time, and my only living came from training people, and I couldn't train people because I was on chemo. They don't care about that. All they know is that this guy has a high credit rating, and he will pay.
Mm-hmm.
No, he will pay. We just have to press him a bit. And they were right. They were right. I wouldn't have this house right now had I not paid. I wouldn't have had any of the houses I've owned.
Mm-hmm. It only makes, I hate to say this because I've literally only been in like the actual practicing of medicine for about 4 years now, but the entirety of that structure only makes sense through an like really pessimistic lens. Like you can't make sense of that and say that's in the patient's best interest. We're really doing good here. Everybody is better off after that than when they started. It's really frustrating. And I get frustrated just talking about it. Even you talking about it, I get angry. And you see it all the time. And it's not something that people, hospitals were like, oh, they're going to go under with COVID. Well, that could be fine. Like why wouldn't a hospital deserve to go out of business? I don't understand the greed of the entire situation. Your insurance practices medicine without a license. They tell you what you can and cannot do. You have to go do prior auths, and you have to try and stay on the phone with somebody. And then they tell you they don't practice medicine because all they're doing is not covering something. Well, if you're not covering the patient's $2,000 MRI, you really are practicing medicine because they're not going to get it anyways. Right. So they hide behind these loopholes, and it's incredibly frustrating. You talked about concierge medicine. There's this kind of in between called direct primary care. And that's kind of that's what we're going to do. That's the future. That's where you remove all of that nonsense you just talked about. And you finally have the patient and the provider, the physician, and you remove the insurance entirely from that equation.
Yeah. I gave a talk, and I've mentioned this on the show before. I get hired to go talk. Right? That's one of the ways I make a living. And it's like, hey, you're going to be talking to this group in San Francisco. And the only thing I ask ahead of time is, which talk am I doing? Do you guys want the cancer survivor story? Do you want the, low carb NSNG story? Which story am I bringing to this talk? And I also ask them, how long am I talking for? And they said, we need you off the stage in 55 minutes. You are a keynote speaker, and we want you to talk about low carb and getting off of sugars and grains and how that can increase, metabolic health and so on and so forth. Great. I show up in San Francisco. I meet the people the night before that hired me to do this event. They tell me I'm going to be in front of 1,000 people bright and early in the morning, and we go out for dinner. While at dinner, I said, well, who is this group? And they said, it's an insurance convention. I said, what kind of insurance? Healthcare insurance. I was like, whoa, you want me to talk about prevention to health? Well, huh? And they said, no, they're looking to hear from you. And I went, me? And are you sure? Because I'm kind of the enemy,
Yeah.
Are they going to be out there shooting, are you going to have a metal detector? Or what are we doing here? And he was like, no, these are small, to medium-sized companies that actually insure, they are the primary insurer of their members, right? They make up their own insurance, and then you can get secondary insurance behind that. So it's in their best interest that the people who work for them stay fit, stay healthy. They pay for their health care and only use they have an overarching thing in case someone does get cancer or, whatever, heart disease or whatever might happen.
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest that their people stay healthy. They want to hear from you. They want their people healthy. And I thought that was a refreshing change, right? I never get to go talk to those type of people. I would be happy to talk to those kind of people every day, right? But they're few and far between. You're nodding your head there, or you're agreeing with me there, Laura. You have something you want to say about that, or are you seeing that, or what's going on?
Yeah. So I think I want to say Blue Cross Blue Shield has done some partnering with Virta, I think. And so I had one of my patients during residency who their insurance company was paying for them to go to Virta Health.
Yeah.
And so they saw the benefit. So it is, I think, slowly happening. And that's awesome that they're realizing we can save a ton of money if we keep people healthy instead of, let them get sick and then cover all the expenses for that.
And then I know what you're doing with Dr. Tro. The whole idea is to help partner with patients, remove insurance companies, and actually get them off of medicine. So they actually save money by partnering with Tro.
Yeah, I let's give Tro a big where can they go to find Tro Kalayjian and Company? What's the company called?
Yeah, so drtro.com, and we've got a metabolic health weight loss program, and then also direct primary care. And I'm accepting patients for both the metabolic health weight loss as well as for direct primary care. I think Tro is accepting for metabolic health focus and weight loss.
So the beauty of direct primary care is that if you were to see me in my residency clinic, you have about a 30-minute visit for our initial visit and just to establish care. And then we can do an annual physical as well for 30 minutes after that. But then it's going to be like 15-minute visits. These visits are as long as you really need them. And as people just get, as they've been in the old system more and more, people just tend to get more metabolically unhealthy, and you need more time to unwind that. I know the fact that I loved hearing every time Tro gives his spiel to a new patient is you're gonna have 600 to 800 touch points with them through their metabolic health practice over the first 6 months. There is no way that these major hospital corporations, and that's what they are, they're corporations. HCA is a corporation. They're for profit, and they don't have the interest in touching base with you in helping you 600 to 800 times over the course of 6 months.
Right.
You pay the money, and you get your doctor, and you get to see your doctor, and you get to talk to your doctor for as much time as you need it. And that, I think one of the things that I always try and think about is how do we get out of the mess we're in right now? And it's not even a mess. It's actually getting worse. Like every new study that comes out that shows the new prevalence of obesity or what the obesity is going to be in 2030. I didn't know if you see this, Vinny, but in 2030, the most common BMI for women is going to be, it's class 2 obesity, which is severe obesity. That's going to be a BMI greater than 35. That's the new normal for women in 2030.
That's why I say we have to first right the ship and then turn it around.
Yeah.
Ship is upside down, and it's sinking. Look, I've said it before. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it again. We are financially, we will break under the weight of our own weight. That's a fact. I've been saying that now for 15 years, and people say, "Oh, we're there. We're there. We have kids." You talk to Robert Lustig; they're being born with obesity.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, we have males with no sex drive anymore, or the sex drive is down. We have problems. It's staring us in the face, and we're pretending. Let's just keep partying. We're good. We're good to go. But it's not good. Where can people find you guys?
Yeah.
Just at Tro Kalayjian, or do you have somewhere else?
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Laura Buchanan MD. And
I'm on Twitter at Matt Calkins, CALKINS MD.
And then we've also got a Substack. It's called agingsuccessfully.substack.com. and we do blog write-ups on a whole slew of topics about how to age successfully.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Would you promise to hang out so that I can say goodbye to you off the air?
Of course,
Absolutely.
Vinny.
Just
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
oh, no, you guys are welcome back whenever you have anything you want to talk about. I don't feel like we scratched the surface. And I got to tell you, if I didn't have another podcast to start in 12 minutes, I would just stay on with you guys for another hour, but I have to go do a podcast with Anna. Folks, if you like what's going on here, we all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner. It puts a little coal on the fire, gets my train down the track. We also have the superfan page at VinnieTortorich.com. You can go there and see what that's all about. We also have the PDF. People have lost hundreds of pounds, 300-400 pounds. I'm not kidding. Tens of thousands of people just by reading my 26-page PDF. So you can check that out at VinnieTortorich.com. Also, go learn everything you can about Dr. Laura Buchanan and about Dr. Matthew Calkins. That's Macaulay's uncle. I just learned his name was, I thought it was both Buchanan. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It's good. It's too difficult to change names once you get your medical degree.
I tried to convince him, but
Those bastards. At any rate, on behalf of the Buchanan Calkins family, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.